Nowadays, youth sports can be so emotional for these kids. And here's why. Parents, I want you to understand something. Kids thrive when you allow them to be exactly who they are. So I want you to imagine this. Your child walks into practice, cleats are laced up, they're ready to play the game that they once loved. But then you look over and the excitement is just not there anymore. And you hear them whisper to themselves, I don't want to be here. That's what more and more kids are starting to say. And it's not because they're lazy. It's not because there's a lack of talent, but because the system around them is crushing their joy. 70% of kids quit sports by the age of 13. And it's not because they stopped loving the game. It's because the game that they loved stopped loving them back. Today, I want to take you inside of youth sports because that's what we do at Creative Dynamic Sports here in Forsyth County, Georgia. Not from my perspective as a coach, but from my eyes of your kids, your youth athletes, and what they feel, what they see, and what we as parents, coaches, and leaders can do to protect them. See, I used to have a kid that had really low confidence, low self-esteem, and he just never thought he could do anything the right way. He always got down on himself when he got it wrong. I took this kid and I explained to him that, listen, this is the no judgment zone. Whenever you make a mistake, don't stop the drill. Keep going. Sometimes you have to speak out loud, count numbers, count your steps. That helps you with your pace. That helps you with the exercise of the drill. Now, this kid eventually learned how to be a little bit more patient with himself and realized it was about the process of learning and creating the foundation. You see, parents, it is very important that your kid creates a foundation. And at the beginning of youth sports, around the age of 7, 8, 9, all the way up to 13 into middle school and high school. But in the younger age, we see kids that are just getting burnt out. Now, why are these kids getting so burnt out so early? Study and research says that kids are becoming burnt out because of early specialization and high-priced pay-to-play models with travel teams, etc. So parents, we have a lot of understanding of what's really going on here with youth sports in Forsyth County and around America. Things are changing. They are changing very rapidly. In college sports, we have the NIL. We have all these different branding and marketing ways of making money for our athletes, and it's starting to trickle down to our youth. We're seeing the youth be affected by not just early specialization and pay-to-play models, but even coaches starting teams because their son wants to play a certain position and that coach wants to put their son in the top position. Now, how do we change this, parents? What do we do to help change this for our kids? They're getting burnt out. They're tired. They're ready to quit by 13. How do we change this? Well, you see, one thing that we can do is go all the way back to the basics, the foundation. When sports was just about learning teamwork, coping skills, the foundational principles of whatever the game was, the boundaries, and the rules. And that is normally what kept athletes safe, is learning the foundation of the game, learning to master the basics. Yet now that has been taken and turned into something where if you don't know the basics, it doesn't matter. And if you do know the basics, it doesn't matter because it's not about what you know. It's not about what your kid can learn. It's about sometimes how much money you got and if you're going to pay to play. Now, that's what we're dealing with, no matter whether you like it or not. Some of y'all may just call it daddy ball. Daddy ball may replace the pay to play model and the early specialization. I think everyone understands that when a dad or a mom thinks their son or daughter needs to play this specific position and doesn't want to change the sport or the position, it's just ruining the youth sports as a whole. Now, you also have late bloomers. Now, these kids are also missing opportunities. Now, I love late bloomers. Now, I will tell you why I love late bloomers. It's because early on, they don't have a lot of confidence. If you explain to them what their body's going through and the changes that their body is making so that they can be as strong as they're going to be in the future, and you can help them conceptualize with their mind like, okay, my body's having all these changes because in 2 years or in 3 years, this is what I'm going to be capable of. So you put them through a program that's more therapeutic modality that's focused on like balance and kind of an injury reduction program because they're having a lot of pains. They're going through their growth spurts, and a lot of kids, they're not going to be their best athletic selves when they're going through their growth spurt just because of all the pains. Most parents think if my kid, now another thing I like about late bloomers is that parents, if they don't understand late bloomers, then they kind of get into a panic because, if my kid is not elite by 12, then they'll never make it. And that's just not true. And parents, sometimes we all have to be careful with what we think about our kids because truthfully, it's their own life. And I've seen kids go pro where their parents never even played a sport. Never even played a sport. So it doesn't matter if you played a sport and you have a son or daughter that's playing a specific position. Lay off just a little bit. Lay off. Let them have fun. And then sometimes you have to also remember what it was like to just be a kid and discover things about yourself. So parents, we can't fix this. We have to try to normalize doing things the right way, creating that baseline and foundational principles in these sports, whether it's football, basketball, soccer, lacrosse, making the beginning of the sport, the learning phase, the most important. Again, 7 years old, I don't care if you play the whole game. 10 years old, I don't care if you play the whole game. What are you learning? I didn't play organized football until 7th or 8th grade. 7th grade, we had a team, but we didn't really have other teams to play against. In 8th grade, we played our first 6 or 7 games, and that's when football really started in an organized manner. Now, don't get me wrong, in the neighborhood, we're throwing the ball around and playing around, but it's not to say that you have to be 7 years old or 8 years old to start playing sports that early to think that that is the only way that you're going to be the better athlete. So it's not true. Now, parents, you want to try to reassure your child that just because they're not playing as much or they're not getting that time on the team, that they're still doing the right things. If you get caught up on one of these pay-to-play models, you have to find out if that's where you want to be because you're going to spend a lot of money. And are you paying enough for your kid to get the exposure that the team is marketing to you? Probably not. So it's probably not worth the money unless your kid, respectfully, is at the top ranks. And when they travel, they're going to see so many scouts and recruits that money that you're spending to be on that team becomes worth it. Don't measure your child's potential by today's scoreboard. The late bloomers often become the ones who stay in the game the longest. And that's why I love late bloomers because they normally have more longevity than the people that have been doing it since 7 and they try to go all the way through to the pros. The voice of the child. If I don't perform, I feel like I've failed everyone. Now that's the other side of the kid's psychology when playing sports or attempting to try out for a sport is they feel like if they don't perform well, they feel like they have failed everyone. So mental health and the pressure that comes along with youth sports is also something that we need to address with the parents, coaches, and our leaders. Now, one of the most important things when it comes to the youth sports organizations or associations is that mental health and pressure is a really big thing for these youth sport athletes. At 7 and 8 years old, not only is there pressure to specialize, but there's just pressure to perform as they're learning the game. So you'll hear a child say something like, if I don't perform, I feel like I've failed everyone. And that's a lot of pressure coming from a kid. And as a parent, you have to learn how to reinforce that what your kid is feeling is not exactly what's happening on the field. Because when they're out there running around, giving 100% effort, it doesn't matter if they miss a tackle, drop a ball. If you're out there going 100%, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And eventually you will make the play. So every time that my kid comes off the field, I will reassure my kid that they're out there doing the right thing. Athletic success means nothing if your child loses themselves along the way. Protect their joy as much as you protect their stats. Everybody wants to see their kid get out there, catch a pass, throw a touchdown. You want to have some good stats, right? So as much as you care about those stats and your kid doing well, protect their joy with the same type of energy. At Creative Dynamic Sports, we like to focus on building the entire athlete, the whole athlete, creating change one athlete at a time. Now at CDS, our philosophy is back behind working with these youth athletes to teach them the introduction of sports performance, which is the baseline, which is the fundamentals to movement, speed, agility, acceleration, deceleration, change of direction, putting on the brakes, and things of this nature. Kids need to understand alignment, posture, movement, and how to articulate their body structure. So at Creative Dynamic Sports, this is what we do. This is how we are able to take kids to the next level by utilizing these modalities in the beginning. Once you teach these athletes, most of them are going to be ready to move on to private training where you're creating custom strategies based on their respective sport, whether it be football, basketball, soccer, or something like that. So here in Forsyth County, we're definitely putting the kids to work and creating strategies to help them see the best results. Now, long-term value with kids working with Creative Dynamic Sports are things like making the high school team, seeing gains in the weight room, as well as earning scholarships. These are just some of the top things that we're seeing kids achieve right away. If you want to get stronger, if you want to get faster, if you want to become a more explosive athlete, Creative Dynamic Sports definitely will help create a custom strategy for your athlete. Now, at Creative Dynamic Sports, we don't just train sports. We have a fitness side as well. This is adults or individuals that have personal goals. This is going to be for people that may want to lose weight or gain muscle or gain strength. Our philosophy at Creative Dynamic Sports is all backed behind bodily structure, injury reduction, functional movement modality, but creating specific tailored movements that are going to help athletes be stronger and more responsive, more reactive in their sport. So we're not just teaching speed, agility, change of direction. Our functional dynamic program is the introduction to sports performance for our youth athletes. So these are kids that have never been through a program, or maybe they're just younger in age and they're looking to develop properly. That's what our functional dynamics program is about. So parents, what can we do about what's going on in youth sports right now? Here's what we can do. We're going to control what we can control. First things first, find a sports performance trainer that cares about your athlete's mindset and not just giving them workouts. Find a sports performance coach that is willing to hold your kid accountable and do the things that they came to see coach for. Find a coach that's willing to hold the parent accountable for the things that they said they wanted for their kid. That's what you got to do. You got to find a sports performance coach that cares more about the money and cares deeply about seeing your kid get results. So if you want to know how to choose the right coach or the right program, you need to ask, how do you value my athlete long term? How do you develop my athlete long term? Parents, the most important thing you could do is focus on finding a sports performance coach that actually cares. You don't have to accept a broken system, and you don't have to spin an arm and a leg. Personal training sessions are going to range anywhere from $50 an hour and up. That is pretty much the standard now. Depending on who you're working with and what they've done, then the price could be a little bit higher. However, most private trainers, once you get in contact with them and you build a rapport, those trainers are going to be willing to spend more time with your athlete as you all continue to work and build through service. Parents, when your child looks back on their journey, they won't remember the score of every game. They'll remember if you believed in them. They'll remember if sports brought them joy or stress. We can change youth sports, one family, one decision at a time. Protect their joy, embrace their journey, build the whole athlete, because the win that matters the most isn't the scholarship or the trophy. It's raising a child who loves the game, loves themselves, and is ready for whatever life throws at them. That's the real championship. Let's work.